Hello and welcome to Seeing Red. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. I am Will Leitch here, as always, with the great Bernie Miklasz. Once again, we're on, follow us on Twitter/X/Blue Sky at Seeing Red Pod. Email us seeingredpod@gmail.com. And of course, check us out on Bernie's YouTube page. I now get schnazzed up for this show. I feel like
Oh.
ordinarily I'm shirtless. I'll be honest with you. When I'm doing this show, I'm just shirtless, gallivanting around. But now that we're on video, I gotta tighten it up a little bit.
Well, you'll always find me wearing a blue or gray T-shirt for the most part. So, and by the way, my praise to you, kind sir, because you show up today and you're bright, you're happy, you're smiling. After what happened to the Fighting
I
Illini
don't know what you're
Saturday.
talking about. I do not know what you're talking about. I actually had a long day on Friday and went to bed early on Saturday, so I don't know what happened. Did it not go well?
The Illini lost by a whisker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I found that clarifying to be entirely like, oh, okay, so maybe we'll get in the Music City Bowl. That sounds fine. That sounds fine. Let's just chill out a little bit.
Well, you're a good sport. Yeah, I was surprised. I thought the Illini would win. And by the way, I can't say I'm as passionate about the Illini as you are, because that would be phony. I mean, you grew up with the Illini, but I like the Illini a lot, and I want to see him win. And I was very disappointed in that. But so no, you're handling it well. Whatever. What the heck, man? You
Listen,
either win or you lose.
I had plenty of time in that game to get used to what was happening.
Right.
It was pretty obvious pretty quickly. But good for Indiana, man. It's good to see.
Right.
I guess fun to see a small school do that. But
So when I know I'm dragging this out. I apologize, but
thank you.
So when you write your college football column this week,
yes.
So you're going to call for the immediate dismissal of Coach Bielema, or what?
No. Again, I have said all the time, I have not lost the fact that this is an 8 wins and the truth, man. If he wins 8 games every year, they'll build a statue out of him, and for good reason.
That's right.
So
Okay.
I have not forgotten who we are as Illinois, Illinois football.
I got
Illinois basketball, we better win a national championship before I die. But for football, 8 wins and the truth is fine. Okay, so this is our Mo show. We're gonna do our big Mo show. We got some great emails, including a truly in honor of you and explicitly in honor of you. One of our listeners gave a big statistical breakdown, like going through deal by deal, that I actually want to load as a PDF and kind of sit out on social media.
Yeah,
he did such a great job of it.
I wrote one of those Friday at STL Sports.
Yeah, and I mean, he literally had an Excel spreadsheet with deal by deal. It was incredible. But we'll get to that in a moment. But I do want to talk about the goodbye, because I guess I should have expected. It is the last home game, so there would be some sort of goodbye thing, but it was a little bit more, frankly, than I was kind of expecting. Not just with Mo, who gave I would say, we'll get into that in a moment, give an interview with Jim Hayes beforehand, but we'll talk first about Nolan Arenado, which is they kind of gave him the holiday, or gave him the Goldschmidt. They kind of gave him the full Molina, I guess. The idea that he came on the field. I feel obliged to remind he is still under contract for the Cardinals for 2 more seasons. But they gave him I thought it was actually kind of a cool moment for Marmol to do that, to come out, let him get some love from a slightly bigger than the last couple of months crowd on the last day of the season, and give a little love to them. It still felt a little weird, just because, again, he's not a pending free agent, to kind of give that goodbye. And they just tried to trade him last offseason and were unable to, though. Again, the fact that he was willing to do, it'd be a weird time, I would say this, for Arenado to say, hey, goodbye, everyone. Thank you for this. I'm still not getting rid of my no trade clause. I'm not going anywhere. It'd be kind of a weird thing for him to do that. What did you think of kind of that last moment for Arenado?
I thought, well, first of all, I thought people were confused at first, and I don't blame them, because I understood what the Cardinals were doing, but I don't think we expected it, and it was a little awkward. Not that anybody screwed anything up; it was just a little awkward.
The broadcasters also didn't seem to be clued into what was going on, which also didn't help.
Exactly. But once people realized, and maybe it took Arenado to make him realize what was going on when he starts walking away, and I forget whether he took his hat off or whatever. No, that was Michaelis on Saturday. Hey, I'm leaving. This is it. You're supposed to give me an ovation here.
Don't you know who I am?
I know. So no, but once the crowd realized what was up, they gave him very warm applause. Listen, there were 2 different Mo things. There was one Friday night, and there was one Sunday, and then there was the Arenado thing. And I thought they were enthusiastic. I thought they were, very, very warm. I think a little muted, especially for Mo. not because people were being jerks. It's just that, it's like, what do? The Cardinals didn't make, even though they were like, they acknowledged Mo Friday night. His family was up there with him, and then Sunday was on the field. But it's not like the Cardinals lined up. Well, the DeWitts are going to say a few words about him, and former players are going to be there standing in the red jackets. They kind of had a subdued ceremony, and I've seen some people like speculate that, well, they realize he's unpopular and blah blah blah, so they went with the low key thing. I happen to politely disagree with that, because I know for a fact that Mo requested it to be low key. He didn't want a big fuss. He didn't want people to just like roll out the red carpet and go bananas.
Well, he's also smart enough to know that would be weird.
Right. And yeah, he understands that he's disappointed Cardinals fans, and he's been upfront about that. He's very disappointed with the way this ended. And then, so, listen, there's a lot fewer fans at Busch Stadium, so they're not going to make as much noise now. I mean, that's pretty simple to understand. But I thought with Arenado, that was very sweet what the Cardinals did. And I also thought it was great that he went along with it and was enthusiastic about it, because he can't assume that he will be back. And I think he's resigned to thinking, well, probably going to happen this year. And we'll wait and see on that. But I thought it was very nice that they did that. And I thought it was very nice that Cardinals fans at Busch Stadium had a chance, in effect, to say thank you. And, it's been great, because I have come, even though I'm a hardliner about, look, you got to trade him. You are too. You got to trade him. Blah. We've been saying that last winter. Keep saying it. I still loved having him as a Cardinal. And I know his offense has been down really bad the last couple of years. I still loved having him as a Cardinal until the end. The dude's making great plays at third base, and he's fun to watch with the way he fields. I mean, I thought that was a pretty cool bonus, what they did with Nato yesterday.
Yeah, even for him coming back, like, again, he had a base clearing double the other night, but he's still not like, like, oh, old Arenado's back at the plate. You certainly don't see that. But I'll say at a certain level, I mean, whatever one's thoughts about Arenado right now, watching all these mostly anonymous dudes kind of filter in and out and not knowing if any of these guys are even going to be around in next year, let alone in the future. Nolan Arenado is a future Hall of Famer. And I think he'll probably go in as a Rocky, but at a certain level, he is. I don't know if I'm gonna remember. I'm probably not gonna remember Jose Fermin in like 15, 20 years, but I'm gonna remember watching Nolan Arenado, right? So there was something about saying goodbye to him and getting a chance to do that. It is still, again, kind of weird that like when Holiday said goodbye, it was we're not gonna resign him, and this is the end of his contract. Obviously, when those guys were retiring, this was we're assuming you're going to get rid of your no trade clause. Because again, wouldn't it be bizarre if Arenado was like, hey, thank you for all of this love. I appreciate it. But no, I'm still not going anywhere. You're putting me at third base and I'm not leaving. That would be kind of strange. So certainly that seemed to acknowledge it by everyone, but it still feels kind of weird to be like, well, I also thought last year would be the last time we would see Arenado, and that didn't happen either. But it was a nice little moment. So that's a good transition into Mo. Friday's thing. I think the thing Friday was, it was muted, but it was not openly hostile, which I will confess, we have seen some openly hostile moments toward Mo over the last few years. And I don't think I'm not going to argue with anyone's thoughts on that. You do whatever you want. I certainly understand the notion behind it. I was kind of glad on the final weekend that it did not turn into like if Jim Dolan stood up at Madison Square Garden or something, right? Like it was not like, here's public enemy number one, get him out of here, boo. It wasn't that. And it was sure muted. And again, one of the things I want to talk about when we get into this conversation is the notion that it wasn't that long ago where legitimately, again, I wrote a piece for Sports on Earth about like, hey, is John Mozeliak going to make the Hall of Fame someday, and kind of make the case for why that could happen? Obviously, things took a turn after I wrote that piece, but there was a time where that wasn't an insane thought. And we're going to get into some details of when that happened and why that happened and how that all kind of came together and how much it was his fault and how much it may have been the owners. But certainly, he's not going out a Hall of Famer or a hero. But I also don't think, and I'm glad the fans did not do this, he does not go out screw this guy. I can't believe boo boo. He's not going out Tino Martinez style at a certain level or Frank DiPino style. He's not going out either one of those ways. It was muted but respectful, and
Yeah.
that feels frankly an improvement on what Mo has gotten the last few years. Not to say he has not deserved it, but I do feel, we've said before, he's going to get a red jacket someday, and he's
For
going to
sure.
deserve it. I don't think you needed to have a red jacket ceremony for him yesterday,
No.
but I do think, over the weekend, but I do think the way it was handled, the way the fans handle it, the way they did it, muted, but the fans also okay, it's time for you to go, but we'll give you enough flowers to where no one feels like jerks on the way out.
Right.
That felt like kind of the right way to do it.
Right. I thought it was cool. The only I'm like you. I didn't want some ugly scene. And here's the thing. And people around the country that would hear this. Not that anybody will from around the country who aren't Cardinals fans, but I'm going to say it again. I know it causes some people to cringe, but it's true. In all my time in St. Louis, 1985 until today, Cardinals fans have been tremendously classy. How many times have visiting team managers, players, executives talked about, wow, our guy makes a great play, and the fans at Busch Stadium get up and cheer as if a Cardinal did it because they appreciate excellence, they appreciate good baseball, and they have great manners. They want to say, hey, you just made a great play, and we're going to tip our cap to you, even though you play for the other team. And I hate to see, I understand why people are upset, but I hate the idea of like when John Mozeliak appears in public on the final weekend of his president of baseball operations at home, final home weekend, the idea that this would turn into some nasty, frankly, embarrassing scene. It didn't. And I think, as I wrote the other day, and as I said in my video, I did a very long video, too long on Friday. It's like 60 minutes about Mo. If people want to watch it, just put it on the fast forward and it'll, I sound like a chipmunk and you'll get through it. But it's like, look, man, everybody has every right to be upset by the way this thing declined the last 3 years. Some people will say, well, it actually declined more before the last 3 years. We can argue about that. And I know their postseason success wasn't the same, but my gosh, they were in the playoffs like 19, 20, 21, 22. And he was the one that got Albert Pujols back. And, the two guys he acquired, Goldie and Arenado, were first and third in the National League MVP vote that year. And the Pujols thing was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in St. Louis. But so, yeah, things were still going pretty damn well here up until 2023. And I just sort of thought, I give Cardinals fans credit for assuming that they're really classy and they're really reasonable and they have manners and they have perspective. But I admit that I think because of social media, I've been wondering about that in recent years because it's so nasty all the time. But the thing that should never happen, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I'll just say this now and then I'll turn it back over to you. The thing that should never happen here is that because of the last 3 years, which have been their 22nd in winning percentage, and because of the recent lack of postseason success, even if the teams were good in several of those years, you shouldn't erase all the great stuff that happened before that. That seems to be very uncardinal-like fanish, because the fans have always been very connected to the franchise history. And as mad as anybody is about Mo, and listen, I've ripped the hell out of Mo, but I never lost appreciation of his huge role in what has been, all in all, an extremely successful and prosperous era of Cardinals baseball. Like, I don't get this mentality, but this is America today. Let's face it, where they soiled the bed his last 3 years. He was really bad at his job. So therefore, all the great stuff, it doesn't count. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the last 3 years were lousy. I don't understand that mentality, and I hope that I never inherit that type of mentality because I just think it's wrong, especially with this kind of franchise and this kind of fan base. It's against everything that I have come to love about Cardinals fans and the franchise. that they stick together. The Cardinals broke the partnership by letting the product decline. I get that. The other stuff mattered. It always will matter, and it always should matter, because that was one of the best eras of St. Louis Cardinals baseball, and he was in the middle of all of it.
I would say, generally speaking, two things. One, general managers don't usually leave, even when they have success. They don't leave carried and like people putting crowns on them and feeding them grapes. Like
Right.
Theo Epstein won the World Series
Right.
for the freaking Red Sox, and he had to escape in a gorilla suit.
That's
or was
right.
that Frank Conan? One of those guys.
No,
But
that
like,
was it. Was
yeah, it was Epstein. Like
was
at a certain level, like like I would argue, all told, that as bad as things have gotten and as rough as things have gotten this year, and as there's a clear, as we'll kind of get through, this is clearly all happened under Mo's leadership, and kind of the way, one of the things I think's really bothered people about Mo is kind of the way that he talks to a lot of people. The idea that that guy gets to leave to polite applause, I actually think does speak pretty well to Cardinals fans.
I agree.
And all told, I think that like when generally speaking, when general manager, most people don't care who general managers are or don't like they may care, but like the average person at the stadium, like I'll put it this way: when you go to Busch Stadium, certainly there's people that are grumbling around Mo. I'm grumbling about Mo. We're grumbling about Mo. But like a lot of people are like there with their families. They're at the Cardinals game. They're not like they don't might not necessarily the front office like structure that's going on. At a certain level, the people that are coming to games the last game of the year, I think are really your hardcore people. This is like me. I watched every second of that game yesterday, even though it was a football Sunday. Now I had a bunch of things. I had like a ton of work to do. I did the baseball podcast. I watched every minute of the game because it's the last time I'm going to watch a game at Busch Stadium until March. And that makes me sad because I really like watching games at Busch Stadium. And if I lived in St. Louis, I would have absolutely gone to that game. Those are your loyalists. Those are the people that you have. Again, the crowds were a little bit bigger this weekend, I think largely for that reason. And those are the people that like understand. I just think he got a generally positive reception.
He did.
Considering what, like he is retiring, but if he were not retiring right now, clearly like it would be time for him to go. And then like if there, and I think in other organizations he might have been fired more recently than now. So
Yeah.
like, and so I say that out of respect and love for the guy, but I would say all told, not only was it not ugly, I think it was handled about as well, if not better, than it would be at any other place. So
Yeah, you and I are totally aligned on that.
so this leads to the discussion of the Mo era. He has been here a very long time. We got a great email from Elias Koblenz, who literally put a PDF together along with a good long summary that I'm going to quote from probably pretty liberally on this. But he went through from November 30th, 2007, from Mo's first signings and Rule 5 picks. His first sign. Here are his first three signings, by the way. Cesar Historis, 1 year, 2.86 million. Jason LaRue, you may remember him, Johnny Cueto, 1 year, 850,000. And a guy I completely forgot the Cardinals ever signed, Matt Clement, who was signed for 1.25 million and did not actually pitch that year. So that's how early that Elias started. He went through deal by deal, win, draw, lose, what's the good deals, what's so on. So many names on here I'd completely forgotten about. I forgot about Mike McDougal. I forgot about Scott Linebrink, all of these sort of things. But really, in a lot of ways, the big thing that Mo had to put together, in a lot of ways, was post Pujols, right? Like that's really like the time where it's a strike. So I want to remember when I think of the great stuff with Mo, I think. One of the reasons that I've always been frustrated by Matheny, one of the many reasons that Matheny always got my goat, was when Matheny got here. Obviously, it was right after the Cardinals had won the World Series in the most amazing way imaginable. A way to this day, I will never, I've said this before, and I know this upsets some people, but I can never be truly too angry as a Cardinals fan because the best thing that could possibly happen happened. Like it just doesn't get any better than that for be a fan of any team. What happened in October 2011, it's just the best. It just doesn't get better than that. And I don't know if it could possibly get better. I still want them to be better. I still care. It still hurts me when they don't do well. But if I die, I can never say, oh, I never had a good Cardinal moment. I had the best Cardinal moment. We all had the best Cardinal moment. But so much of most stuff after that was Matheny coming in and was Pujols leaving and Matheny coming in. And one of the things that really frustrated me about Matheny was it felt like not like the Cardinals had lost Pujols, but it felt like this engine was running real well. The joke I used to always say was it was like Glengarry Glen Ross when Al Pacino, I imagined basically Mo and the fans being like Al Pacino in that movie and Matheny being like Kevin Spacey at the end. Your job is to help us, not to F us up. And like that's really felt what it felt like for Matheny for a long time. And I think that speaks to how well Mo kind of had things right now. Some of that came in the wake of Lunau and him kind of setting up. But I always say that the Cardinals at 2006, they won the World Series 2006 and had the worst farm system in baseball. Then they won it again in 2011 and had the best farm system in baseball. That's generally not how things work. Usually you have to do what the Cardinals are doing now. You have to break down and build back up. They were able to rebuild the plane in the air while waving goodbye to Albert Pujols is really kind of remarkable. And a lot of that was Mo. Let's not forget when he loses Pujols and listen, we can all a lot of times people are like, one of the best moves that Mo ever made was not re-signing Pujols. He wanted Pujols back. We all wanted Pujols back. There was a great interview that Mo gave after Pujols left where he looked stunned. Like he looked
Right.
like we were all stunned that Pujols had left. But like the way that he rebounded that was he got Carlos Beltran, a great deal. He extended Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright, things he might not have been able to do if Albert Pujols had come back. And let's not forget, also had that farm system coming up of Matt Carpenter and Alan Craig. People forget about Alan Craig, about how good of those guys were coming up. It was really, really rolling there for a while. To me, the definitive Mo at a peak of his powers moment that working against Matheny kind of messing with him was the Alan Craig trade. I always felt, remember, Alan Craig was broken. He was broken, but Matheny continued to put him out every single day. And I think I joked at the time on Twitter, back when I used Twitter, I joked at the time that like, don't think of this as Mo trading Alan Craig. Think of him as putting like one of those dog folds around Matheny's neck so he will stop biting himself. Right. And like that felt like that felt like a lot.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and that's really what it was. And he had to do a lot of that. And more to the point, we trusted Mo explicitly. I think that was the idea of where he was during that time. So I don't know if you can entirely disconnect. Listen, hiring Matheny was, I think, pretty obviously a mistake. And I think it led to a lot of other things. It's not the only thing that went wrong, but certainly that feels like when things started to pivot a little bit. Not that 2013 wasn't a good year, or there weren't some good times, but I think that was the start of things starting to go a little bit. But I would also say that like the idea of if you're going to talk about how much Mo has screwed this up, we have to remember not just what he did, but how trusted he was. I believed in him explicitly and for good reason. And so, so go ahead.
No, and that's what I mean. I'm not into like erasing history, and the history with him is incredibly positive. And that 2014 trade was one of his masterpieces because, okay, they gave up Joe Kelly. That's fine. But in giving up Joe Kelly, they offloaded $30 million they still owed to Craig, who was broken, unfortunately, as you said. And they also picked up John Lackey, who transformed that clubhouse as soon as he got in there. That was a very sleepy team, very complacent team. And Matheny couldn't reach him. And then Lackey was not only good in 2014, he was great in 2015 when they won 100 games. And I remember I wrote something. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I wrote a column praising Lackey for being a porcupine. Just having bristles and
the rusty nail, as Derek.
Yeah, the rusty nail. And I got a text message from a Cardinals pitcher. I don't think it'd be too hard to figure out who it was, and said, can't believe you wrote that. We don't like this guy. It makes us uncomfortable. He's this, he's that. He's like always running his mouth. He's always just like getting in people's faces. And I said, I wrote the back. I said, no disrespect, but that's exactly why he brought him in here. You guys, not you, but you guys were basically as a team snoring through the season. That's what Mo recognized his team needed, an enforcer, someone that was going to actually take people on and say what was on his mind. And because you all got uncomfortable, that was the reason why they made the trade. But anyway, and then listen, 2011 was an absolute masterpiece. I mean,
that trade should not be overlooked. That was a great trade. I mean, obviously it was.
You know, when things started to go bad for Mo here, I would get correspondence all the time. It's like, well, I hear you talking about Mo did this, do that. He had nothing to do with that 2011 World Series. It's like, my gosh, if you're a fan of the team, I mean, how could you even say something like that? I mean,
and I hated that trade when they made it. I hated
which one?
The Rasmus trade. The Rasmus trade. I hated that trade, and obviously I was very, very wrong.
But before that, I mean, the first trade he ever made was to trade a disgruntled Jim Edmonds for David Freese.
Yeah, right.
I think that worked out okay.
I think so.
Yeah, I think 2011 might have been influenced by that, but that's just me. I'm a homer, I guess. And we talk about the Rasmus trade, which was absolutely brilliant. It basically saved their season. And people forget about Edwin Jackson, because Edwin Jackson was really good the rest of the year, and they needed a starting pitcher. Edwin Jackson's numbers were really good. He even won a postseason game where he pitched well. And then they got two relievers, and then he added another one later on, and it saved their bullpen. It rebuilt their bullpen. It saved their rotation. And then later on, which I think has been forgotten, Ryan Theriot had just stopped hitting. His defense wasn't good. Mo went out and got Rafael Furcal for nothing. And he was exactly what they needed down the stretch to play shortstop. And he played very, very well. His teammates loved him. He was outstanding in the clubhouse. He had a lighter touch that counteracted some of the more kind of intimidating personalities in that clubhouse. And before the season too, I told this story. I'll tell it again briefly. I was actually covering the St. Louis Rams at Arizona. There was a football game, whatever it was, early December, late November, whatever it was. And I get a call in the press box during the game, third quarter, and it's Mo. And he says, I want to let you know, because I know you're covering football. We just, we're going to make a deal to bring in Lance Berkman for 2 years. And I said, what? And I said, listen, you're probably going to get ripped for this because, frankly, I said, he was going through what everyone refers to as like the fat Elvis stage. Yes. and he had a bad knee. And Mo said, listen, you got to trust me on this. He said, I had long talks with Berkman, and he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed by the way he looked. He's embarrassed by the way he played. And he wants to go out on top. He wants to finish strong. He is as highly motivated as an individual as I've ever seen. I have full confidence we're going to get something really good out of him. Look at his 2011 season. Now the knee problems hit him in 2012. But look at what he did in 2011.
I mean, they didn't win the World Series without him. I mean,
31 home runs, 94 RBIs. He had an OPS plus of 164. Not bad.
Yeah.
And then their season was literally one strike from being over in Game 6. It's 2 outs. It's 2 strikes. They're down by a run. And I still can see it in my mind. I know that's a cliche, but I can. Yeah. Lance Berkman takes a 2-strike pitch, and he just kind of hits a soft line drive, short left field, where there wasn't a chance of anybody getting to it. It was like a beautiful swing. It's almost like it was like a Tony Gwynn type of swing. Yeah. And ties the game, and the rest is history. But
my favorite, my brief story about that, Lance Berkman, I loved it. The next day in the newspaper, they asked him, like, what did it feel like? He's like, in that moment, when you're a kid, you're all like, oh, I'm gonna get the hit to get us. It's up to me. I'm gonna get the hit to win. And you're like, what an amazing moment. When you're there, you're like, oh shit, I'm going to make the last out in the World Series. This is terrifying. I found that very human, the way that Berkman always kind of talked about that. It made it that much more impressive.
Yeah. Like two of the biggest players in that game, obviously were John Mozeliak trade acquisitions. And then, you also have Descalso and Jay coming through. And one of the reasons why he traded Rasmus is because he met with Tony La Russa before he made the trade. And, they both talked about, is John Jay ready to take over in center field? Because if he's not, we might have to think about this. And they talked it over, and they both were in agreement. They were both big John Jay fans and said, yeah, all right, we're aligned on this because we both believe in John Jay to take over in center field. And John Jay was terrific after he took over in center field. So, in other words, you don't get credit. Like he didn't trade for John Jay, but a trade was made that upgraded the Cardinals in center field and upgraded their morale by creating a starting job for John Jay in center field. I mean, yet there are people that still insist, that was Walt Jocketty's team. He had nothing to do with it. Hello, Matt Holliday was on that team. The Cardinals gave up, they gave up a set of golf clubs and Brett Wallace
Yes.
for that, right? And then he got him signed to the contract, which a lot of people doubted he could do.
And a lot of people didn't like the contract. That turned out great.
And that was one of the best contracts ever. So all of quote Mo guys were all over that 2011 team. And yet that's what I mean. That's what scarred me. It's just like, don't you dare try to deny the credit that he fully deserves. Be like me. You can rip him all you want for how he let this thing slide, him and DeWitt both. Okay. Total criticism for that. But don't you dare try to erase or begrudge or be so petty that you won't even recognize all of these incredible moves he made when the Cardinals were at the top of their game, and they were in the top of their game for a long, long time. And, oh, by the way, he was the draft director who, 2 years running the draft, Pujols and Molina. I asked Walt Jocketty once, I said, listen, I give you credit for that because you were running the organization. You were the general manager. And he told me, he said, well, that's nice. And yeah, technically you're true. The general manager has the final say. He said, but I trusted Mo. He said, Mo, hey, you've put all the work in on this, and I know you have. So if you think this is who we should draft, you draft him, So where would Cardinals history be if John Mozeliak had traded for, or he had drafted a couple of schmoes who weren't Molina and Pujols, right?
That is
seriously.
That's a great point. So Wally Thomas actually wrote something, and he said, talking about Mo's legacy, and he said, a lot of ways, and unfairly, Mo is seen as the Jerry Krause of the Cardinals. That those who haven't followed NBA history, and I don't. He's not saying that. He's not saying he's like that. But I do think there's a little bit of perception that not specifically Krause, but the idea, as Wally points out, the four players most associated with the success of the Cardinals in the last 20 years are Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, Adam Wainwright, and Chris Carpenter. And for fair, again, as you just point out, kind of unfairly, those guys are seen as predating Mo. Those guys are seen as ones that not his guys. His guys were after that, and I think more memorably the stuff that's failed the last few years. But I think that that's a key point to remind people that no, he was actually involved with the organization then and was very integral to it. But I do think that is part of it too. I don't think it's correct, and I definitely don't think it's fair. But I do think there is a sense if I had Albert Pujols for 12 years, or I had Yadier Molina for 15, 20 years, or I had Adam Wainwright for this much time, I'd probably be able to win a couple of World Series too. I do think that's part of it, particularly because when those guys left, that's when things, for the record, didn't go off the rails. There were actually some really good years there, but they didn't win World Series. And the one real fun year of the last, 5-6 years was the year where Pujols came back. And it was the year of the Molina year. And I think that has contributed, I would say unfairly, but kind of understandably, why that's led to a lot of frustration toward Mo as well.
And, I was very close to Walt Jocketty, and we had a lot of talks off the record about this or that through the years. And, when we say John Mozeliak was an assistant general manager to Walt Jocketty, he was an assistant general manager who Walt empowered on a lot of things. Mo, for example, did a lot of the legwork in talking to people about whether it'd be worth to take a flyer on Chris Carpenter, who was coming off shoulder surgery or whatever. And he laid out a case of why it's risky, but also laid out a case of here's why it could work, and presented all this stuff to Jocketty, who made the final decision to sign Chris Carpenter. But Mo had a role in that. Mo, this is one that gets overlooked, and I'm not saying Ryan Ludwig's going to the Hall of Fame, but uh, Jocketty assigned Mo the responsibility. He said, "Look, we need a right-handed hitting outfielder. Somebody we don't have the money to spend to like go out and buy a guy off premium price off free agency. We don't have that in the budget. But just see what's out there. Just see who's worth taking a chance on. See if there's someone we should definitely pick up at a low cost and give an opportunity to. Because if it doesn't work, it's no big deal. Nothing ventured, nothing gained." Well, Mo came back and with a big time recommendation to sign Ryan Ludwig, which they did. And in 2008, 37 home runs, 100 RBIs. He was an all-star. He was a really good outfielder. That's another one that he doesn't get credit for. In fact, when I was writing my thing the other day, that's one that I accidentally left out. And Ludwig, by the way, then flipped later on when they were desperate for starting pitching, and they got Jake Westbrook. And Westbrook was kind of an underrated guy. He did a really good job for what they needed him to do. And oh, by the way, technically and officially he was the winning pitcher.
He won game
in 6, World Series Game 6.
Right.
So I mean, Mo's high profile things were great, but he also did some things, below the radar that were really good too. He lost his fastball. He stayed too long. Right. He knows that too. But my gosh, he came to St. Louis with Jocketty in 1995, and he was by Jocketty's side the entire time, and he was entrusted and empowered by Jocketty. And the other thing he did was the whole Jeff Luhnow people versus Walt Jocketty people. It was awful. Yeah. It was just a civil war inside the building. And when that ended, Walt was, fired, and because that was DeWitt. DeWitt was just burning up with the fact that they couldn't get along, and Walt wouldn't back off and all this other stuff. Well, the Luhnow people and the Jocketty people hated each other. And one thing Mo did that sustained the success of this franchise, and it's another thing I have not emphasized enough, was he healed the division inside the building. He got everybody working together again when he became the general manager. He really did. He got everyone cooperating. This turf war, these turf battles stopped. And you don't, as they say, you don't read that in the box score, but that was pretty huge. That was pretty significant. Anyway.
It's funny, the last decade. So this is a great thing from Elias Kopit's thing, that he talks about the turning point. And I think this is a key thing that gets lost. Yes, he lost his fastball, but you know what really happened? The Cubs. The Cubs are what happened. And that this has always been a worry. There's always been a worry forever, is that like someday the Cubs would wake up and realize, oh, we could maybe be the Yankees or the Red Sox if we wanted to. And there was that brief stretch where they were, where Theo Epstein puts that together. They start to build back up. They start to spend money. Signing John Lester was their clear thing that we were going in that direction. And as Elias points out, their ability to basically the turning point, he argues, whether there's an actual catalyst or simply a convenient line of demarcation, seems to have been losing Jason Hayward to the Cubs following the 2015 season. It was the first time their trade and extend model had failed, and Hayward not only had rejected St. Louis's overtures, he chose the hated rival Cubs. Now, on one level, that contract did not work out for the Cubs, unless you say it was worth it to get a World Series because they gave a great rain delay speech.
Which I am a high cynic on that.
Yes, I am as well. But I mean, not to say I don't dislike Jason Hayward, but like that contract clearly did not work out for the Cubs, even if they got a World Series. But that and Elias is not saying the Cardinals should have. The reason they collapsed because they didn't have Jason Hayward. However, what he does kind of point out, and I think this is kind of correct, is that kind of led to some bad contracts that felt like chasing the ghost afterward, like trying to catch back up. Mike Leake came shortly after that. They stole Dexter Fowler back after that, one that also didn't work out well. Brett Cecil was after that. Luke Gregerson was after that. Greg Holland, the extension to Carpenter, Andrew Miller. That was when you started to see, shortly after the Hayward thing, contracts starting to go bad. That's when you really started to see some really bad ones. And that combined with the farm system. And listen, it wasn't that long ago that we were like, look at the Cardinals did in 2020 in that draft. There were only 3 rounds, and look at these amazing guys they got. Mason Wynns actually turned out fine. But again, Jordan.
Burleson's looking pretty
Burleson's
good.
done good, but and obviously Jordan Walker has not quite paid off the way you like. But the point is, not like they've suddenly just fallen flat on their face in draft. It's really been development. Development has been the issue. They just used to be able to bubble up a Matt Carpenter and bubble up an Alan Craig, and they just have not done that.
Yeah,
And
it's
and I
the decline of starting pitching that was
yeah.
internally developed has been just appalling.
Now,
Um,
I'm curious about Mo's quote about this last year, and then we'll
Go
close.
ahead.
I know we're going kind of late, but
All right.
Mo had that quote about the way he was allocating payroll in the idea that, listen, the thing that went wrong is we felt like we needed to compete now. So we transferred payroll to the big league team that ordinarily would go to development. Now, that feels, on one hand, that's one of two things. It's either Mo trying to kind of cover his arse a little bit after making some mistakes because there were some bad free agent contracts, or I guess it could be both, or I kind of feel like maybe Bill DeWitt in that situation. Why can't we do both? I own the
Right.
Cardinals, and this is like a beloved thing that we have. Why
Right.
are we penny pinching in that idea? But I do feel to this day, as people get annoyed with DeWitt, I guarantee you Mo would have loved to have been like, hey, I'll make these free agent signings and remaining invested in the farm system. That was a choice that was given to him by DeWitt that is not Mo's fault that he had to
Right.
choose that. He may have chosen incorrectly. I think he did choose incorrectly, but when the Cardinals were rolling, they didn't have to choose that. They were able to do both, and that to me seems when you and that's this is not this has turned into more of a defense of Mo thing than I think I've meant to, because there's clearly a lot of mistakes that have happened. Look at where we are, like that's under Mo's watch. But certainly, I also think a big factor of that is that DeWitt thing that Mo said explicitly. I had to take some money away from the farm system to put in the big league club, and we've clearly seen the results of that.
Yeah, I've been talking for years about how DeWitt's on but Mo never was autonomous, not even close, and DeWitt's in on every major baseball decision, and frankly, he should have been because, frankly, despite the fact people would laugh at this, DeWitt's got a baseball background. He grew up in a baseball family. He used to go with his father on scouting trips when his father was the general manager of the Reds, and then later the owner of the Reds. I mean, DeWitt would ride with his father to all these remote towns everywhere, scouting people and taking notes and helping the scouts. And he even put in this crude, very early in the cycle of computers, this very crude version of a database for all their scouts could use to get instant information on prospects. Bill DeWitt did that. He's got baseball. He's a businessman, but he's also got baseball DNA in his bloodstream, and so I think he's more knowledgeable than he has been more knowledgeable than most owners, but he also has a seat at the table to where those decisions are made. Those decisions were made by two men making them. So if you're going to blame Mozeliak for stuff that went bad, you also have to include DeWitt in the blame. Also with some of the credit. They were a great team together for a long, long, long time. But towards the end of the Mo years, that thing just kind of went off. It got lost. It just got old, and that's not a shot at Mr. DeWitt. It just kind of got stale. The whole thing got stale. But DeWitt's always been in the middle of everything. So yeah, it's really disingenuous to somehow remove DeWitt from the conversations when you're in the mood to rip Mo only. That's just not accurate. It just isn't.
Okay, and the last thing I want to talk is really kind of how Mo will be remembered. And Elias kind of closes with the idea. He feels like I don't know if I quite feel like the 1-to-1 ratio works, but he was saying that like ultimately he feels like maybe his tenure will be remembered. He relates it to Jimmy Carter, which I'm not sure I quite buy the 1-to-1 analogy, but I get what he's trying to say, which is the idea of someday what's seen as a really bad time will be seen more better in retrospect than it was felt in the current moment. Now, I don't know if Jimmy Carter is the right analogy for that, but certainly I understand what he's saying. To me, a lot of that has to do like maybe, but honestly, what the best thing that could happen to John Mozeliak's legacy is if Chaim Bloom screws this up. Because if Chaim Bloom turns this around the way that we think that he has a real possibility to do so, it will definitely feel like, well, good thing we got rid of Mo and let this guy to take over. And not to say that Mo wasn't a part of the process. He's been working with Bloom for 2 years now. So I think acting like he wasn't there for this transition, he was, and he was a part of this stuff. But I do think that like, while it will be hard, it's not like just 2 or 3 years went wrong for Mo. It's been kind of a rough decade. It's been kind of a
Gradual.
rough decade in the
Yeah.
when you consider Cardinals history. I think that while he will deserve his red jacket, and I think all the things we've talked about, the good things he's done, I do think the only when you're talking legacy, you cannot separate what's happened the last 10 years from his legacy, whether it's his fault or whether it's not his fault or it's entirely his fault, it's someone else's fault. I think the best thing, this is the one thing I don't want to have happen, is if Bloom turns out to be a disaster, which seems very unlikely, and clearly even if he does, new blood was obviously needed. But
Right.
if the Cardinals are not good for another 10 years, then Mo, I think, will reflect. And listen, in an age where Matheny can come back and they interview him in the booth, like, hey, we love all those great times you gave us. Obviously, like there's a nostalgia aspect to this where we will always kind of like spit shine people's legacies. But I do think when you're talking about Mo, he will deserve the red jacket. He was a big part of stuff, but I mean, it's been 10 years where things have gone down, and look at where they are now. He
Yeah.
has to kind of own that.
Well, I think he does. But the other thing is, listen, they with this year included, they've missed the playoffs, 2016, 17, 18, and then another 3-year period of 23, 24, 25. So they've missed the postseason 6 times in the last 10 years. That's a lot for the Cardinals, where they only make it 4 times. But I also, I'm not. I'm just one of these people, and I think it irritates others, and other people can be irritated by it, and they can also. We can all agree to disagree, but I'm not one of these people that just thinks like, well, well, I don't care if they made the playoffs. Well, no, I actually care when they make the playoffs because the best I can tell, going by the rules, you got to make the playoffs to actually win a championship. So yeah, you better make the playoffs. The fact that their frequency of making the playoffs started to dry up, that more than the lack of postseason success, because once you get into the postseason, anything can happen. And I'm a firm believer in that. So I know that the last 10 years, starting with getting demolished by the Cubs in the 2015 NLDS, even though they won 100 games that year, like some people want to act like that
Yeah,
season didn't matter.
that was a good year.
They won 100 games, okay? By that time, I think the Cubs had more going for them. Like at that moment in time, the Cardinals had this starting rotation. The pitchers were all falling apart and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Holiday was hurt. Molina was hurt. Yeah, I mean, the Cubs at that moment in time, even though the Cardinals won the division by a game or two, the Cubs were a better team and they won the series. But that left a sour taste. Listen, 16, 17, 18, that could have been avoided. But that's when Matheny, all due respect, like started going into the Colonel Kurtz mode and just sinking deeper and deeper, going deeper and deeper into the wetlands of Cambodia or whatever. It's just
the calf.
Absolutely paranoid about everything. He on one hand, Matheny had a really great winning percentage, all things considered. But on the other hand, I think they stuck with him too long. Yeah. And I think they know that now. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing. I mean, waiting too long to promote Schilt because he always wanted Schilt to be the manager, waiting too long to make that move, and then whacking Schilt after the guy took you to the playoffs 3 years in a row. I think that stuff works against him too.
Yeah, agreed. And I think to your last point, I also think, I mean, let's face it, we talk about like ways he could have salvaged his legacy. There's really two things that could have happened. One, he could have made the playoffs this year. I think if he'd have made the playoffs, there was a time when the Cardinals looked like they might make the playoffs this year. It feels like a long time ago. But that would have been, but I would also say really the opportunity that was missed really was 22, like that season, like that felt like a potential World Series winning team.
There's no doubt about it. The talent was there. The talent was there.
Yeah, and it would have been, and if that would have happened in Pujols' last year, remember, let's not forget Pujols was hitting like old Pujols for like the last 2 months of the year, and in the playoffs, one guy that hit in the playoffs. So like that it's not Mo's fault that Arenado and Goldschmidt did not hit in the playoffs that year.
Right.
And so, like at a certain level, that would have salvaged it too. Does it? So that's like these things are all narrative. These are all vibes. These are all that sort of thing. So I think that's worth remembering. But the close, I think he gave a very almost kind of winsome, kind of almost sad interview with Jim Hayes, his longtime fake antagonist, before the game on Sunday. And there was Jim asked him what he was going to do next. Because remember, Mozeliak is not like 94 years old. And, he asked him what he's going to do less. And I think wisely, smartly, with that little kind of Mo smug twinkle, said, you know what, you're not going to hear from me for a while. And I think that's probably okay for everyone. Let Mo go away, sure. Go drink wine in a fancy place somewhere. Come back in 3 years, and we'll have a nice warm thing about it. He'll get his jacket, and it'll be a positive thing.
He's got a great vacation. I'm not going to say where, but he's got a great vacation plan. So I'm happy for him and his wife Julie.
Oh, good for them. Good for them.
Because Julie and their daughter, well, he has a son too, but it was always his wife Julie and their daughter. They would always go to this certain place. Like they've gone like 7 or 8, 9 times, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And Mo never went because it's in the middle of the baseball season.
Right.
So he's finally going to be able to go on this trip with them. Listen, I'm happy for this guy. Yeah. To your point, my closing remark is this. Listen, I do take the good with the bad, but what I think you do at the end of the line, you look at the whole body of work and even with all the mistakes and all the bad stuff baked in. I mean, his time, first of all, not even including his work alongside Jocketty, which does count and is very important, but just from the time he took over 2008 season, only the Dodgers in the National League have made the postseason more times, and only the Yankees in the American League have made the postseason more times. I mean, the Cardinals were still a really good team, not quite as imposing, but still a really good team. You make the playoffs 10 times, you win 6 division titles during that time. And this is after transitioning from not only Pujols and, then you got to transition away from Beltran, and everybody else gets old. And the end of an era, we talked about this recently here on Seeing Red, the end of an era, it can be awfully rough. Yeah. There's a lot of sports franchises.
Theo Epstein running out in a gorilla costume.
I know. Yeah. Just so, and it's kind of naive, if not kind of dumb, to think this type of thing couldn't also happen to the Cardinals, So yeah, they kind of screwed it up at the end, but the body of work, especially if you take in his role as Jocketty's top lieutenant, his body of work stands out very well, even with the bad stuff put in there. If you look at the whole thing, that's my point.
In the words of Mo, you're welcome. There we go. That's how we'll close on all of that. All right, Brady, we're going to be back for a season closing show next week, and then we'll do some shows in the off season. But our final show of the season, assuming the Cardinals don't win all 6 games this week, and the Mets and Reds and Diamondbacks collapse.
You gotta love. Again, I'm not even taking a shot. I actually think it's funny, and I like it because I think I know Chip Carey well enough to know that there's a little mayhem with him, and he says stuff that shouldn't be taken like literally. Like when he said the other day, it's like, well, the Cardinals, with that win, they're still in there. They're still 4.5 games out.
Right.
And I know before he says it, I know like the way he thinks. He's like, oh, I'm going to say this because I'm supposed to be the big time like rights holder homer. So I'm going to say this. And he sort of does it almost to like pull everyone's legs. He's funny, but he'll be out there this week. And it'll be like, well, I know they're 5 out with 6 to play, but
hey, you never know.
Brad Thompson, they still have a chance to.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Crooks is currently pitching, but there's an opportunity.
I love those guys actually. And actually, they ought to be more homers with Bloom entering the rebuild. They better start talking about the rebuild and what a smart thing it is.
I have many thoughts about the broadcast. I feel like I personally think fans are getting a little bit too I was gonna say a little bit too public relations guy for a rock. Remember that guy? But it feels like that's like a very common thing in American life right
It
now.
is. It is. It is.
So I don't know if I can really make that really be mocking a rock that way.
I'll just try to make a buck, man. Everybody
Yes,
has to
exactly.
make a buck.
Exactly. All right.
Good
Be
guys.
safe. We will talk in 1 week to close out the season. Bernie, a pleasure. Seeingredpod@gmail.com. This was a fun show. Thanks for coming on with me.
Thank you.